Good evening, and welcome to the 2025 C. Henry Smith Peace Oratorical Contest. My name is Anna Groff, Assistant Professor in the Communication Department and Contest Director. Welcome to all of you here at the Umbel Center and those of you who are watching on the live stream. It is so good to see so many community members, faculty and staff and administrators, and of course the many students that are here to support their friends, their classmates, and their peers this evening. It is you all, our supportive audience, that is a crucial part of the speech-making tradition here at Goshen College. And it's year after year that we gather to listen to these speeches for stories and new perspectives and inspiration. So thank you again for coming out on this cold night. I have some brief history before we move on to the introductions. In 1907, the first Intercollegiate Peace Association contest was held here. In 1974, the directors of the C. Henry Smith Trust established a Peace Oratorical Contest in the name of the late C. Henry Smith. C. Henry Smith was a Mennonite historian and professor at Goshen College and Bluffton University and had a deep interest in the Mennonite peace tradition. Let's begin by recognizing our three judges for the contest this evening. And I invite the judges to stand while I introduce you, and we can all save our applause until the three introductions are finished. Brianna Nickel is a 2010 alumna of Goshen College's Bible and Religion and Peace and Justice programs. Currently in her fourth year as Assistant Professor of Bible and Religion at GC, she holds graduate degrees from the universities of Yale, Tübingen, and Notre Dame, and has previously taught at Augustana College and the University of Notre Dame. Her research focuses on the interwoven lives of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim communities across history, and she is deeply committed to interreligious education and peace building. She also enjoys coffee, chocolate, and watching the YouTube videos that her students send to her. Richard Aguirre has been the City of Goshen Clerk Treasurer, the Chief Fiscal and Public Records Officer since July 2021. Previously, he worked here at Goshen College for 14 years in a number of administrative positions. Before that, he worked as a reporter, columnist, and editor at newspapers in California, Texas, and Oregon for 26 years. He serves on the executive board of Mennonite Church USA and has a bachelor's degree in journalism from California State University, Fresno. He and his spouse, Judy Weaver, have two adult children, Richard and Annie. Mark Schloniger. Mark is a pastor at Berkey Avenue Mennonite Fellowship in Goshen. He is a graduate of Goshen College, the University of Cincinnati College of Law, and Eastern Mennonite Seminary. Mark and his wife, Sarah, also a GC grad, served 3 years in Mozambique through Mennonite Central Committee. They live in Goshen and have 3 children. Let's give a round of applause to our 3 judges. We are also so grateful to Tyson Miller, a senior journalism major, and professors in the communication department for serving as judges in our first round preliminary tryout this year. And a special thank you to Joshua Weaver, who served as a speech coach for our finalists. Joshua is a Goshen College and Anabaptist Mennonite Biblical Seminary graduate. He has a background in debate and is a high school Bible, religion, and social studies teacher at Bethany Christian. Now I'm going to tell you about our 5 finalists for this evening. First, let me tell you a little bit about all the hard work that they have put into these speeches for tonight. So in January, they passed through our preliminary competition. Then they wrote the draft of their speech and received written feedback on that script from professors in the communication department. They also named a mentor, someone here on campus to work with in practicing and preparing their speech. They watched videos of winning speeches from past contests. They worked with Joshua here on this stage last week in individual coaching sessions. And then just this afternoon, they each did a private run-through on the stage, and they are ready to shine. They have invested deeply in these very important topics, and you will see that in just a few moments. And a quick note that the order that they will be speaking in was determined by a drawing. So each of the finalists sent me a short bio to share with you as part of their introduction, and I invite you to stand one at a time as I introduce you. And if the mentor is here, and when I say your name, you can put your hand in the air so that we can see you as well. And please hold your applause until I've introduced all the finalists. So we begin with Lindsay Graber. Lindsay is a third-year English major with minors in Peace and Justice Studies and a Criminal Restorative Justice from Goshen, Indiana. On campus, she acts as an orientation leader and a peer wellness educator, participates in Goshen Monologues and Prevention Intervention Network, and works closely with GC's student publications Broadside and Pinchpenny Press. Lindsay's mentor for her speech is Courtney Stern from the English department. Next up is Kate Boddicker. Kate is a junior writing and communication major with a minor in Bible and religion from Berlin, Ohio. In her free time, she enjoys reading, writing, crocheting, watching soccer, and spending time with her friends. This semester, she's also the features editor for The Record, a broadcaster for the Globe, a TA and a tutor, and a member of campus ministries. And her mentor for her speech was Pastor Jen Shank. Third is Peace Muhagachi from Dodoma, Tanzania. Peace is a senior sociology major with minors in peace, justice, and conflict studies and women and gender studies. Peace is president of the Advocates Affinity Group, as well as a member of several other clubs on campus. She is passionate about advocacy and research and hopes to continue the work she started at GC in her future career. And Regina Shan-Stolzfus, professor of peace, justice, and conflict studies, served as Peace's mentor. Fourth, we have Alyssa McDonald, senior broadcasting major with a business minor from Salt Lake City, Utah. She's a captain on the softball team, vice president of the Asian Pacific Islander Desi American Student Union, a resident assistant in the Romero Apartments. She is also student executive producer of Globe TV, and in her little free time, she enjoys watching movies, hiking, snowboarding, reading, and watching sports with friends and family. Her mentor for her speech was Chandler Buckfeller, director of Res Life. Lastly is Naomi Lapp Klassen, senior history and criminal and restorative justice double major from Goshen. Naomi has played on the women's tennis team and been a member of both Voices of the Earth and Chamber Choir, while participating in several theater productions and providing academic support as the history department's student assistant. After college, Naomi would love to pursue work related to peace, public policy, and restorative justice. Robert Brenneman, professor of criminal justice and sociology, served as Naomi's speech mentor. Let's give them all a round of applause. So I am done talking about the speakers now, and we will be hearing directly from them. 5 speeches on timely and important themes of peace and justice. So I invite you to put your devices away, give them your full attention. We will begin with Lindsay and follow the order in the program. First, prior to the beginning speech, though, I invite campus pastor Jen Shank to come to the front to offer words of blessing and a prayer. And after the prayer, Lindsay will begin her speech.
Good evening. In times like these, we are aware, possibly more than ever, of the need for peace. Peace in our world, peace in our country, peace in our neighborhoods, peace in our relationships, peace in our hearts. Here at Goshen College, we are an Anabaptist faith institution committed to the ways of nonviolence and following in the footsteps of Jesus. These students you will hear from tonight are bearing witness. They are giving testimony to glimpses of God's reign here on earth. These students are prophets, dreamers, and truth tellers, and they are paying attention. If you listen closely, you will hear them calling us to greater faithfulness. They are helping us imagine a world where hatred, violence, injustice, and oppression do not have the final say. They are helping lead the way as peacemakers in a world that so desperately needs it. So as we listen this evening, let us give thanks for these students, for their courage, their passion, and their commitment to justice. And before we go any further, can we all just take a deep breath with them? A nice inhale and exhale. Students, know that we support you, we love you, and we bless you. Please pray with me. In the words of St. Francis of Assisi, Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
When the elephants are fighting, even fleas can make a difference. I heard this quote when attending a Mennonite Central Committee conference in New York City in November 2024. When Carolyn Rodriguez-Burkett, United Nations representative for Guyana, said this quote, she was referencing her experience currently acting on the UN Security Council. The Security Council is made up of 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members who have less power in the council given their temporary status, which is what Rodriguez-Burkett was referencing. And despite this quote's strange and somewhat confusing talk of fleas and elephants, something about it and her experience resonated with me. You see, when I was 10 years old, I swore that I was going to be a lawyer someday. I was just a kid, just a little flea, and yet I thought I had it all figured out. I liked to read, I liked to write, I was good with details, and most importantly, I loved to argue. And I was good at it, too. I was loud, I was unashamed, and I always thought I was right. And even as a kid, I felt very strongly that whatever I did in my life, I wanted to help people. The media I consumed and loved constantly portrayed lawyers as altruistic heroes who took the wrongly convicted underdog under their wing and in a passionate display of brains and morals overcame injustice, beat those big elephants. I wanted to do that. I wanted to be the Atticus Finch or the Ruth Bader Ginsburg or the Bryan Stevenson. And I truly believed that it was possible. As I grew up, and I started to learn more about law and politics and the government and the way that they operate, I got a little disillusioned. It didn't seem like the same system I used to think I could conquer so easily. The truth is, the justice system in this country is broken. And a lot of what happens in and because of the system is, in fact, not very just at all. In some ways, fixing it might seem like a hopeless cause. But I believe that there is still value in working inside of broken systems like the justice system, especially by people who believe in values that these institutions often greatly lack, like peace, love, and social justice. It's just a question of figuring out exactly how to do that. I attempted to start finding answers during my sophomore year of college, when I took 2 classes simultaneously, one on criminal justice and one on restorative justice, 2 differing approaches to the same topic that overlap, intersect, and deviate in a plethora of ways. In criminal justice, I learned the true, hard facts of the US justice system, both the good and the bad, without much commentary on if it was good or bad. I learned how public defense attorneys are vastly and dangerously overloaded with cases. I learned from the National Advisory Commission on Criminal Justice Standards and Goals, which acts as the standard for determining caseloads, that defense attorneys can handle 150 felony cases per year, with 14 hours of work per case, although those numbers are considered somewhat outdated. In reality, I've studied over the last 20 years, and the National Public Defense Workload Study, public defenders sometimes have as many as 436 cases a year. That means, on average, those attorneys only have 4 hours and 47 minutes to defend clients. Less than 5 hours to defend someone facing decades in prison. Those public defenders, then, cannot adequately prepare for the cases they try, meaning their defendants are not offered an equitable chance at justice. That is not fair for those defendants. And it's not fair for those defense attorneys either. They are severely overworked, fleas up against caseloads and standards that loom like elephants. And I suspect that most of them wish and feel like they could and should be doing more. The inability to provide defendants with adequate counsel is especially significant given the many facets of justice present within the prison system itself. In my restorative justice course, in pursuit of seeking alternative routes to traditional criminal justice, we discussed the way that prisons are about control and regulation much more than they are about rehabilitation. That sort of atmosphere breeds a culture of mistreatment and dehumanization, where people who are incarcerated are no longer valued as people once they commit a crime. In fact, it has led to the existence of for-profit prisons that rely on inmate labor to function. The goal of these prisons, then, is not necessarily to lower rates of reoffense, as having prisoners is intrinsically tied to making money. These facts, among others, collapsed all of the dreams and worlds of possibility created by those movies and books I loved. If I was a public defender, Tom Robinson wouldn't have even had the slim chance he did, because I wouldn't have had time to be Atticus Finch. And once he was convicted, the chances of him actually being rehabilitated by the prison system would be extremely low. It was awful to realize that the injustice of the system is a reality, but the opportunity to fight for true justice within that system is nearly impossible. I felt like a flea again, but this time it wasn't because I was physically small. It was because the criminal justice system and all of the injustice within felt too big, like literal and metaphorical elephants. It didn't feel like I could make a difference, and maybe I had no business trying. I didn't know how to reconcile the skills and passions I held with the vast problems I saw in the system that those skills would translate most directly into. How could I work inside of broken and unjust systems without being complicit in the injustice that they perpetuate? How could I find peace and love within systems built on fostering the exact opposite? And if I did work in and under those systems, how could I find peace within myself? Despite these difficult questions, I was reminded of the power of the flea by a different speaker at the same conference where I heard Rodriguez Burkett speak. We received a short presentation from Faith Croaker Moss, who works as a negotiator on behalf of the United States within United Nations discussions. Croaker Moss explained to us that, as a Mennonite, she believes she can inspire positive change simply by remaining a consistent actor in the UN system and letting her values guide whatever small-scale decisions she is given the ability to make. Suddenly, I understood the flea metaphor in an entirely new way. The truth is that change is best made from inside unjust systems, those out-of-reach elephants, because utilization of those systems is often required in order for them to change. For example, to alter the legal and judicial system, you have to pass laws. You have to set precedents. And those things can only be done by actors already within the justice system. On the outside, we as citizens can protest. We can advocate. We can write letters. We can hold rallies and marches. And those things are important, and they need to be done. But we will be heard so much better if we are already inside the building, bothering the elephant from within. Working in an unjust system does not make someone inherently complicit. However, in that role, the intention must be to work for change and to promote peace. I may not agree or be at peace with all of the views and operations of the criminal justice system, and in fact, it's good that I'm not. Because the key to achieving social justice is not complete acquiescence. It is the sense of unease and discomfort that keeps us striving to do better and asking for more from our institutions. As the flea, we can create that discomfort by consistently working for small adjustments and slight compromises that will irritate and build up until they can no longer be ignored. I truly believe that the small, everyday actions that people inside systems can take is an integral part of social justice that is often deeply ignored. Keep calling out the injustice of systems and governments, but remember that those systems are made up of people who need guidance and support and genuine care. Those people can change things, so let them know what you want changed and ask how you can help. I don't know if I'm going to be a lawyer, but I do know that working from inside our justice system is where I think I could be most instrumental in effectively promoting peace, even if just a little bit. In a criminal justice system full of and run by elephants, I want to be that flea. Thank you.
Almost exactly 1 year ago today, I was sitting in Mindo, Ecuador, around a new table with a new host family to get to know. The humid air from the river behind our house mingled with the savory scent of frying eggs and rice from the pot on the stove. My Spanish was still not exactly where I wanted it to be, but every night after moving in with my new family, I found myself staying at the dinner table just a little while longer, enjoying the conversation with just a few more things that I was learning to say, and appreciating the universal language of food. The culmination of these dinner-time conversations was on Saturday, when we headed up to the restaurant that my aunt owned, which my host grandmother had started. We would enjoy empanadas de harina and té de manzanilla while catching up with the extended family about the week. These nights were some of the highlights of my time abroad and really helped to solidify my place as feeling like a new part of the family. My host mom had taken to introducing me as her nueva hija, her new daughter. And this all came to a head when she asked me the week before I was due to leave if I wanted to learn that empanada recipe so that I could take it back and make them for my family in the States. Now, maybe it's the Amish in me, but I know what it means to have a family recipe, in particular one you started a restaurant from. I was ecstatic to learn, hoping to share the incredible flavors with everyone back home, but also to have a reason to spend time eating with my friends and family. Something that had become so important to me while I was traveling, and something that had been long pushed to the wayside back in the States in favor of other essentials. And that fact has always struck me, that there aren't that many things that we as human beings have to do in order to stay alive. Pretty much just water, food, going to the bathroom, sleeping, preventing injury and illness, and we're pretty good to go. But out of all of these things, we spend most of our day doing them privately. I don't know about you, but I would definitely not want anyone there while I was going to the bathroom, and I would think it was a little out of the ordinary if someone made a big deal about drinking water together. But we as a people have decided that eating is something we tend to do communally. It's actually one of the few things in modern American culture that we're encouraged to do together, from family mealtime to lunch with friends to snacks with friends in the dorms. Most of the time, we tend to worry about ourselves and our own needs. But we structure our whole school day around the times that we need to eat, setting up to gather around a table together. However, in 2023, the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, released an advisory entitled Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation, an advisory on the healing effect of social connection and community. Such advisories are reserved for, quote, significant public health challenges that require the nation's immediate awareness and action. His research, which was before COVID, shows that 1 in 2 adults report experiencing loneliness, and the pandemic has made this even worse. One of the main ways that he cites to combat this plague is taking time to eat together, setting aside time each day to share a meal with your loved ones, though that can be easier said than done. Executive Director of the Family Dinner Project, Ann Fishel, has found in her research that only 30% of families find time to eat together regularly. Now, this may feel like a shockingly small number, but I know as well as anyone how easy it is to come up with excuses for this. Oh, we're too busy, I have practice, or a rehearsal, or a game, or a concert. Suffice it to say that my family growing up was part of that 70% that Fishel didn't mention. On top of that, the National Eating Disorder Association reports that as of 2020, 9% or 28.8 million Americans will have an eating disorder in their lifetime. And every 52 minutes, one person dies as a direct consequence of an eating disorder. They have also found that in the United States, 69 to 84% of women experience body dissatisfaction and want to be a lower weight than they currently are. Now, take all of this in with the knowledge that America is currently experiencing a self-diagnosed loneliness epidemic. While it may sound simple to improve your eating, I'll be the first to admit that as a college student, this can be a real challenge. When I get stressed about anything academic, my eating habits are usually the first thing to go, whether that be overeating while I procrastinate or skipping meals to get things done. Clearly, this doesn't bode well for our physical, or as I have mentioned, our social health. And on top of this, I'm also not ashamed to admit that I am in that majority of women who have looked in the mirror and was disappointed by what I saw. Even back in high school, before I had social media, I was beginning to fall victim to an unhealthy relationship with food. A pretty dangerous thing to play around with, considering how essential it is to our survival. And one instance that really made this issue come to the forefront of my mind was a few years ago, when I was in one of my worst moments with food. Members of my church took an online class on narrative in the Bible. And one thing our professor opened all our sessions with was a review of what he called the sin problem, or what causes a lack of shalom in our world, a Hebrew word meaning a peace that is not just the absence of violence, but the presence of right relationships, and how the world ought to be. So in this view, sin is something that either breaks our relationship with God, with others, with all of creation, or with ourselves. And during this class, I was reminded of the series that my church had done just prior to that, establishing our 6 different focal spiritual practices that we try to hold each other accountable for, one of which is eating together. Now, a lot of this is intended to focus on building community and relationships, but there is a certain vulnerability that comes along with eating, as we have a bad habit of ascribing moral weight to the different foods we eat. However, in the often quoted verse of Mark 12:31, Jesus said, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." If we cannot learn to love ourselves and our bodies, how can we begin to truly love our neighbors? For me, this was a wake-up call, By isolating myself while eating, not only was I breaking the relationship between myself and others, I was also violating my own inner shalom, harming the health of my body and of my soul. And I know this is true for other people. We make eating an incredible, stressful, and anxiety-causing activity, when what it should be is a celebration of our community with others and the nourishment that we're providing for our bodies. The Bulimia Project found that 50% of women feel guilty about what they eat when they're getting food with other people. For an activity that is so inherently life-giving to our body and our relationships, this is a pretty scary statistic. However, despite what you might expect, people actually feel statistically less guilt about their food when they're eating alone, or when they're eating with others. So even for people that struggle with food consumption, meals with other people pose a benefit for both social connection and a better space for providing for their body. And the time we spend with others eating has a positive ripple effect throughout our day and the rest of our lives. Additional health benefits found by the National Library of Medicine are that, quote, people who eat socially are more likely to feel better about themselves and to have a wider social network capable of providing social and emotional support. It's in our best interest to make an effort to find the time to eat with the people that we love. So, America's loneliness epidemic is in part being caused by its increasing war on women's bodies, with oppressive beauty standards and its toxic culture surrounding food consumption. But even though this may feel counterintuitive, the best way to fight America's food problem is food. So where can we go from here? First, set aside time to eat with your friends and family members, even if it's new family, like what I found in Mindo. But be reasonable as well. Don't set unrealistic expectations, even if it's just a few times a week. Second, make recipes that make you happy and find a balance between your comfort food and your necessary nutrients. And finally, I encourage you to remember that treating your body well is an act of resistance against the powers that would rather see you unhealthy and alone, who benefit from your biggest concern being a lower number on a scale, rather than fighting for yourself and for your community. Peace begins within ourselves, and the restorative power of breaking bread together heals both the shalom in our community and most essentially within ourselves. We must learn to love our bodies so that we can turn that love outward and truly love our neighbors, just as we love ourselves. Thank you.
I often think of how ironic it is to be named Peace, yet carry as much inner turmoil as I do. According to my mom, my favorite word as a child was why. And I honestly think I've been an existentialist ever since I could form my own coherent thoughts. Lately, I've been thinking about the pervasiveness of violence as well as different methods to rectify and address the violence in our lives. But violence can look like so many different things, making it difficult for us to identify certain experiences as violent, especially if they don't leave a physical injury or involve some form of weapon. Today, I will be using the terms violence and physical abuse interchangeably. I feel that it's important that I define what I mean by these terms. To me, violence and abuse are experiences that alter relationships. Abuse can range from hitting or spanking to psychological manipulation, as well as verbal degradation coming from both an internal and external source. Violence is the spectrum upon which abuse occurs. As a child growing up in Tanzania, my earliest memory of violence was witnessing my older siblings getting spanked as punishment for missing our 6 p.m. curfew to play soccer, or for accidentally breaking a plate, or any other developmentally normal behavior for young kids. Though I did have my fair share of spankings here and there, I dealt with far less physical punishment than my brother and sister. I did, however, endure a strange kind of violence, which I would now describe as psychological violence. I remember times after fighting and tussling with my siblings where it would then be made my decision whether or not my siblings got their spanking. for pushing or teasing me or making me cry, as older siblings normally do. The mental stress of having to make that decision created a psychological wound which forced me to accept violence as just another part of life. However, acclimating to violence does not soften any of its effects on the body or the soul. As I got older, the majority of the physical violence I endured was brought upon myself. Self-harm, recklessness, and neglect of my physical and emotional well-being all happened as a response to the neglect and physical violence that I had gone through growing up. The violence in my life tore me away from my inner peace. The culture of violence that surrounded me made it difficult to reach out. I couldn't cultivate the relationships needed to heal and grow from the pain that we all collectively carry. I reacted by self-inflicting violence that I felt I deserved for reasons I can't really articulate. In 2016, researchers Elizabeth Gershoff and Andrew Kaler conducted an analysis of over 70 studies across several decades which focused on the impact that physical punishment has on child development outcomes as well as adult social development. Results showed a significant link between physical punishment and accelerated risks for detrimental outcomes. So, not only is physical punishment ineffective in improving kids' behaviors, it is damaging. In children, this manifests as aggression, antisocial behavior, low self-esteem, and more. But these children grow, and they become adults. Adults who are wounded and often dealing with mental health issues. Most notably, they become adults with a complacent attitude towards physical punishment. In other words, they become adults perfectly conditioned to repeat the violence cycle. I see this unfolding in my personal life as I think back to my father's childhood stories of abuse at the hands of his father. I'm struck by how quick he is to defend those actions as if it was his fault for being a child, for being a human with flaws. I'm reminded of how corporal punishment is so normalized in my culture and those beyond. A 1998 study conducted by researcher Victor Vieth found that nearly 50% of adolescents in the US experience physical punishment. I recall my own childhood being littered with memories of getting hit by an adult or hearing the cries from my neighbors' kids as they received their beating. I wonder how those kids' development was affected. I wonder how my father, brother, sister, and my own development have been affected. A lack of healthy outlets and a culture that prevents vulnerable conversations from taking place most often leads to the internalization of violence. When this happens, we become removed from our true selves, reduced into being purely reactionary beings. The catalyst of violence is a sense of fear that causes us to forget we are all deserving of peace. Fear prevents us from seeing others as whole beings. Violence and fear keeps us trapped in a cycle of hatred of the self and hatred of others. When we are ruled by fear, we regard anyone different as an enemy. A young black man in a hoodie gets fatally shot because his demeanor is threatening. Refugees fleeing war and persecution get labeled dangerous animals. Wars waged against foreign countries kill millions in the name of self-defense. Children get beaten out of fear that their behaviors indicate a flaw in their character. This only perpetuates that violence cycle. Breaking this mentality requires critically analyzing the culture and community from which we are socialized. We have to be comfortable with questioning the beliefs that our families, our cultures, and our nations hold. We must intentionally decide to understand the ideas and philosophies that shape our definitions of violence. How have we characterized violence and violent people? What do they look like, act, or sound like? How has the history of your country informed social and systemic understandings of violence and violent people? Change starts with an awareness of your own personal relationship with violence. Think about how you've handled conflict in the past. Did you react and argue? Did you run away from it or face it head on and attempt to fix things? Many of us will find that our answers are a reflection of our own communal context. Because we are all products of our environment, it is on us to find alternative responses to cultures of violence that have infected our hearts and our psyches. Cycles of violence are made stronger when we see punishment as the only or best response. It's important that we reframe our perspective of justice, not as a process of winning or losing, but rather as an opportunity to heal and repair broken relationships and connections. A philosophy of restorative justice means always considering the needs of those who have been harmed. Restorative justice recognizes that although we are all affected by our circumstances, we are also equally responsible for our actions. When we act violently, it is our obligation to take accountability for the ways that we harm others, the community, and ourselves. Restorative justice also challenges us to find ways to involve all of the affected parties. But what does justice look like in situations of abuse? Maybe it starts with figuring out the reasons behind a child's behavior. Understanding the root of the issue instead of only punishing the actions may go a long way in not only correcting bad behavior, but also starting an honest dialogue. Ultimately, restorative justice is grounded in respect for all, even those who have harmed us. This aspect of the process has impacted how I view my own experiences. Though I do not excuse what was done to myself and my siblings, I've reached a place of understanding. I know that my family's decision to turn to physical violence is a result of something much bigger than any of us. When our values are rooted in respect, we can see the humanity in others and begin to live restoratively. We become aware of the role that culture plays in perpetuating violence and destruction that's prevalent in all of our lives. As I step into my newly found adulthood, I feel compelled to find ways to break the violence cycles that have existed in my life and upbringing. It's obvious that we are all hurting. Each one of us carries a story of violence and pain within all that we say and do. Pain lives in our bodies, and it manifests in our inability to connect and develop relationships that are bonded by mutual respect. We've become closed off from ourselves and each other. Today, I want to challenge you to meet your pain. Look at it, explore where it came from, and take the steps to heal from it. I say this as someone who regularly runs from their own pain. I am by no means healed, nor do I practice living restoratively 24/7, but I do try. I keep a journal where I try to write as truthfully as I can. And when that isn't enough, I sit in silence and I cry. I ride my bike really fast down the mill race to symbolically let go of all my pain. And when that doesn't seem to work, I pray and I give my best friend a call. I'm taking baby steps, and I invite you all to do the same. It won't be easy and it won't be comfortable. But trust me, it will be worth it. Thank you.
I think all drugs should be legal. I think cancel culture is doing more harm than good. I actually like the new ID card policy here on campus. These are just some of the topics that I've written papers about or given presentations on here at Goshen College. And I hope one of those topics made you a little uncomfortable or made you think, well, that's not right, she's wrong. And that's the beauty of debate. Hearing countless other arguments and seeing how your ideas stack up against theirs. Our minds start churning. We start to wonder about our own views. We may even become curious about others' views. But I fear that social media and an increasingly polarized society has caused us to lose sight of the core of debate. Understanding other people's points of views and learning why they believe what they do. Social media creates echo chambers. These algorithms want your attention, and to get it, they feed you the same content and opinions over and over and over again, all while validating your views. This means that unless you go intentionally looking for it, you're not going to find views that are different from your own. And this is the root of the problem. How can we expect anything to change if discussion and collaboration are sidelined for comfort and the feeling of security that our ideas are right no matter what? According to a Pew Research poll taken in the summer of 2023, 84% of American adults say political debate in the country has become less respectful over the last few years. That same poll reported that 61% of people say having political conversations with people they disagree with is generally stressful and frustrating. And these findings are nearly identical across party lines. So I can hear you wondering, Alyssa, in such a toxic environment, how could you possibly like to get into arguments and debates? You know, on Thanksgiving, when your entire family comes over and everyone's having a good time eating, and then Uncle Joe says something completely off topic, and an all-out debate starts over pumpkin pie. That was my dinner time experience growing up. But it wasn't just on Thanksgiving, it was every single day. My older brother and my mom are extremely similar. Both are intelligent, strong-headed, and artistic. And I'm sure you can see how they might not get along all the time. Almost as soon as we sat down to eat and got through the basic questions, like how was your day and what did you learn at school, my brother would bring up some outrageous topic, and he and my mom would debate it over the whole dinner. It was at these moments, when I was young, that me, my dad, and my little sister would give each other a look, finish eating, and go upstairs to watch TV. I thought these pointless arguments were loud and annoying and ruined a perfectly good dinner. But as I got older, I would start to sit in on some of their debates. Some classics in my family that come to mind is if pasta salad is actually a salad, or if cereal is just cold soup. But some of my favorite debates are the ones that carried more weight, like voting for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, or if healthcare should be universal. This is what debate is all about. I've learned so much about myself and my own views through listening to their debates, and sometimes joining in myself. Although my skills are not nearly as honed as theirs, I know my voice is always valued and heard, and usually rebutted with a better opinion, but my point still stands. I remember their debate about healthcare very clearly. My mom has been a registered nurse for 16 years and always believed in a free healthcare system. My 25-year-old brother, on the other hand, favors a hybrid healthcare system, like the United States has now. They brought up topics like the human ethics of healthcare, the cost of school for those in healthcare, student debt, the lack of healthcare workers, and other points to back up their arguments. And this was one of the most heated debates that I sat in for. But even when they were in the trenches, going back and forth, it was always respectful. They never made the argument personal. They just argued the point that they were trying to make. This respect and the idea that there's still a person behind these beliefs has been lost in today's digital world. Anyone, anywhere can post anything they want, with or without proof to back it up. And when those views are challenged, more often than not, ad hominem arguments become all too common. This is causing Americans to lose faith in debates and shy away from a foundational part of not only our democracy, but our way of understanding and connecting with each other. Researchers at the Haas School of Business at UC Berkeley published a study last March about how much Americans think people debate. They found that Americans actually overestimate how often other people get into debates. Americans greatly overestimate the number of debates that take place online and with strangers. In fact, most debates happen between friends and family. They also reported that people find political debates to be unpleasant, challenging, and anxiety-inducing experiences. My mom could have chosen to shrug my brother off and ignore his ideas and opinions, not only ruining a perfect opportunity for her to understand and connect with him, but also invalidating his opinions without giving them a second thought. But luckily, that didn't happen. In this particular debate, my mom did end up changing her mind about healthcare, and she now agrees that while our system is flawed, it's the right way to go. She's not embarrassed that she, quote unquote, lost the debate. There is no winning or losing, only further understanding and connection. And this wasn't just a one-time occurrence. In every single debate, at some point, my mom and brother would finish because either one of them changed the other's mind or they knew they weren't going to change the other's mind. Then they had their fun and got on with their day. And by dessert, it was like the debate had never happened. I would go get my sister and dad from upstairs while my mom put on a kettle for tea, and my brother would get out Catan so we could play a game before bed. Debate at its center is about collaboration. It brings together multiple perspectives in the pursuit of truth. The ability to think critically and allow your views and beliefs to be challenged by others with the knowledge that they're not going to try to belittle or argue with you, but make a genuine effort to understand why you think the way you do would reshape the way we interact with others that we don't agree with, and allow us to start solving issues we shy away from. Opportunities to engage in debate are everywhere, from sharing what you thought about lunch today to talking about whose speech you liked best. We find debate in these informal settings and formal settings, like a debate team or in-class discussions. So, in an increasingly hostile world, how can we have these conversations in a way where everyone is benefiting from the experience? In an article published from UCLA, Mark Peterson, a professor at the Luskin School of Public Affairs, has 3 rules to follow. First, unlike political debates on television, stop thinking about winning. This can be tricky when talking about a serious issue, but you can still be passionate and care about something while being respectful. Just like my brother and my mom, we need to treat debates more like discussions. Second, we need to focus on understanding. Speaking and actually listening are core principles of finding solutions to problems. If we refuse to talk and listen to one another, how can we expect anything to change? Lastly, and most simply, be kind. As Peterson says, quote, "Being kind extends to the people you disagree with. We all inhabit the same earth, live under the same sun, and breathe the same air." I think back to the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. We have to live with people who we agree with and with people we disagree with. Learning how to live and love together while having these conflicts is a powerful thing as we strive towards peace. We cannot allow ourselves to live in echo chambers, whether online or in person. The only way forward is through healthy debate, letting go of winning and being ready to learn. Someone has to have these difficult conversations. And if we really want to make a change, we have to have those conversations together. And it's okay if we don't come to a consensus. It's okay if we agree to disagree. The point of debate is simply having the discussion while looking through a lens of understanding and kindness. Thank you.
On a bone-chilling February morning, 2 years ago, I sat in the passenger seat of a Goshen police car. My back was tense, hands clenched and sweaty, mouth clumsy and dry. I had never joined an officer for a ride-along before. But as we drove, my anxiety settled. We discussed my class on contemporary policing while the officer's radio chimed with unintelligible announcements. until eventually one piqued her interest. I sat up straight as our sirens blared. 20 minutes later, I watched through the car's windshield as two officers searched a disheveled man in a Walmart parking lot. He was drunk, his face red, glasses broken. He grasped a handful of fireball shooters. One officer shoved him into the seat behind me. "Don't talk to her, buddy, you hear me? Don't talk to her!" he barked. The man was charged on site with public intoxication, shoplifting, and inhaling vapors from cans of spray paint. I saw his list of similar convictions while we drove away. He was unemployed, on disability, and lived at a faith-based homeless shelter nearby. When we reached the Elkhart County Jail, I watched the Walmart man. He paused before the intake entrance, recognition dawning on his face. "I remember it's almost lunchtime here. Can the kitchen save me a tray?" The criminal justice system in the United States is incredibly complex. There is so much that I don't know. However, this minor, legal, and relatively drama-free arrest planted something deep in my heart that I just can't seem to dislodge. Sitting there, witnessing this man's arrest implicated me in his story. He'd been incarcerated numerous times in his life. He'd been held, fed, released, caught, held, fed, released. And for the first time in my life, I had actually seen it happen. Jails and prisons in the United States are often invisible to non-incarcerated Americans. These institutions sit silently, isolated from public attention, while our busy lives continue outside. There are so many headlines to read, so much attention to direct, and excruciatingly, not enough time to address it all. To be honest, I feel very chained to what's far away, digital, and out of my control. I feel pushed in so many directions, so zoomed out from my own community, that I rarely engage with problems that haven't been specifically designed, orchestrated, and molded for me to see. Recently, I've wondered whether it's possible to take back the power of this site, because we are desperately in need of a new source of hope, or at least I am. Today, I will explore how engagement with local issues like mass incarceration is a powerful way to reclaim agency in a world and news cycle that's been built to discourage it. In 2025, it is easy to ignore the American incarceration crisis. But according to data from the Prison Policy Initiative, we funnel about $182 billion into incarceration systems each year. On average, there are 2 million people behind bars at any given time. For context, that's as if we locked up the entire state of Idaho. In 2022, Indiana incarcerated 49,000 residents in total. The only countries with higher rates per capita than Indiana were El Salvador and Cuba, according to the Vera Institute of Justice. Due to a wave of tough-on-crime policies from the 1970s, an overused American prison system has become commonplace, especially regarding easy-to-catch, nonviolent crimes such as drug possession and shoplifting. While crime rates have dropped in the United States since the 1990s, our prison populations have not followed suit. They have rather grown older, less violent, and increasingly placed in isolated facilities, like the one here in Elkhart County. So our prisons aren't going anywhere. They've just become invisible. Considering the data, we should care about the affairs of our local detention centers. Incarceration is costly. It increases family instability and mental health issues among inmates. And it is shockingly ineffective at preventing repeat offenders or healing the root causes of crime. But it's also a hard issue to see, since its very goal is that of locking up and stowing away. As President Trump begins his second term in the White House, he has vowed to arrest and detain the estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants currently living in the United States. This poses a significant human rights crisis, but also threatens the already oversized holding capacities of American incarceration systems. So I'll repeat it. Our prisons aren't going anywhere. As actors outside of this system, the worst thing we could do is assume that it's none of our business to address it. Sirens blare, we'll breathe with relief, switch lanes, and thank God we're not their target. I had never visited the Elkhart County Jail until I was literally locked in the passenger seat of a police car. And I will likely never meet that man again. But maybe it took seeing this issue to realize just how connected to him I was. 6 months after my ride-along, I returned to the Elkhart County Jail as a member of an inside-out classroom filled with half Goshen College students and half Elkhart County Jail inmates. Inside Out is an international program that specifically encourages conversation between incarcerated and non-incarcerated community members. During this class, I talked to people that I found out through conversation had grown up in Goshen neighborhoods just like mine, or had attended Chandler Elementary School just like I had, and yet had experienced grinding levels of poverty, trauma, and generational injustice. I remember a mother discussing her experience with homelessness and domestic abuse as a child, who wished better for her children, yet mourned her distance from their lives. They're growing up without me, she'd say. I just want to be there for them. That same spring, I attended a fundraising banquet for Elkhart County's jail ministry. During a speech, jail chaplain Corey Martin questioned the audience, "What does it actually mean to be tough on crime? Are we just being tough on people? Aren't we more served by tearing down inequality and building up people to combat crime rather than pushing them away?" I think back to the man from Walmart. I remember it's almost lunchtime here. Prison-based programs like the Elkhart County Jail Ministry and Inside Out prove that it is possible to engage with local jails and prisons in a way that feels hopeful. Shorter sentences for offenses that don't deserve confinement and increased resources for schools and safety nets are tangible solutions we can pursue. If you connect with the Elkhart Jail Ministry today, you can sign up to provide rides home for newly released inmates. I can't think of a better way to humanize this issue. As peacemakers, we can engage with justice systems near us and vote for leaders that aren't resigned to its permanency. But most importantly, we can travel to places within our own communities that for us aren't curated. Just like Jesus affirms in Luke 4 of the Bible, we can call on ourselves to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind. I believe that people, regular people, crave to be a part of peacemaking processes. But it is true that this need often feels impossible, since we are constantly bombarded with news of so many crises, so much suffering, that our attention and empathy are in desperately low supply. That's why I believe that if we seek often invisible issues, we'll rediscover a sense of empowerment that's been clouded by our hurting world. Otherwise, will be forced to passively absorb catastrophe and give in to hopelessness. I say, let's choose its opposite as harbingers and champions of agency and sight. Thank you.
One more round of applause for the finalists. Thank you all. Each of those speeches was a gift to us this evening. I am going to dismiss the judges to do the very important work that they are here to do. While the judges are deliberating, I invite you all to visit, to enjoy the reception in the Yost room. And whether you're here in Humble or you're joining us remotely, please stay until the judges return and I will announce the runner-up and the winner of this year's contest. One note, keep the refreshments in the Yost room in the lobby and not in the auditorium here. Thanks again for being here. Thanks to all of you who stayed and are ready to hear the winners. And a big thanks to the judges for their hard work. I am ready to announce the second place winner and the recipient of a $350 award. Second place is Peace Muhagachi. And the first place winner and recipient of a $500 award and the opportunity to represent Goshen College in the Mennonite Central Committee binational competition is Naomi Lapp Klassen. Congrats to you both, and congratulations to all the finalists. One more round of applause. We will see you all back here for the 2026 contest. Thanks.